Hello and welcome to Earthflower Farm's YouTube channel. Well, it looks like yet again Chicago didn't get much of a spring. We got a 100-degree day to mark the beginning of the growing season. So I wasted no time to get my seedlings into the ground, and I wanted to start this video with a little garden tour. Here I've got eggplants interplanted with radishes and peas climbing up the fence behind them. I started all this stuff from seed back in the greenhouse, and I planted the radishes and the peas on St. Patrick's Day. Now in the row next to them, you'll see some baby pepper plants. I've got jalapenos, shepherd peppers, and bell peppers. I used to plant all the peppers that I could find. I wanted to have a huge variety, but I've settled on my favorites, and now I just plant a lot of my favorites. Don't mind that little patch of weeds that I've still yet to take care of. Now I've used this fence to support my cherry tomatoes. They're going to get nice and viney, so I wanted to make sure that I have a good support for them, so I'm utilizing the fence that's already there for them to grow up on and give them some support. Now straight ahead here in my trellis area, I've got tomatoes on one side and peas on the other side. Eventually I wanted to put tomatoes on both sides, but for now the peas are going to give us a harvest before the tomatoes are ready to go in. And in about a month or so I'm going to replace it with some tomatoes because I really like tomatoes and I've settled on growing what I like to eat best. I love peas, so I want to make sure I utilize the cooler weather to get them in, and then the patch will be nice and full of nitrogen, ready for tomatoes. This is called succession planting, and it's when you plant one crop before planting another in the same season. The edge of this bed is where we're going to be planting our onions. Today I wanted to bring you guys along to plant some young onion plants with me. These onion plants right here, I started back in February in my greenhouse. I started them from seed, as I've long moved away from planting onion sets. I find that starting plants from seed gets you stronger, bigger onions that don't bolt and really deliver at the end of the season. So, let's get started. First things first, I'm going to remove one of the cells and just take a look at the little bunch of plants that I've got in there. As you can see, there's plenty of roots, but the roots aren't hopelessly root bound and coiling around the edges of the pot. I keep the soil a little bit drier before I do this because the soil easily falls away that way and separates each plant, which is exactly what I'm going to do right now. I've got to separate each of these little plants from the next one just like this before I can put them in separately. I start my onions from seed and I give them a couple of trims before I set them out. That way the onions direct more energy toward the root and less toward the leaves. I wait until each plant has about 3 strands of greens on top, and then I know that they're ready to go in. I want to make sure that I delicately pull the plants apart from one another, not to break any roots while I'm doing this. Now I grab my hand trowel and I just loosen the soil at the edge of this pea bed. Onions make wonderful companion plants, so I love incorporating them with something else as opposed to just planting them all on their own. So let's talk about the soil. You want to make sure that your soil is very fertile, it's light and it's fluffy. It drains well, doesn't stay waterlogged, and is in full sun. Also, take care to remove any rocks, pieces of wood, or other loose debris that will hinder the development of a nice big root bulb. There shouldn't be anything but soil there. You definitely want to make sure that your soil meets all of that criteria before you put your onions in, or else you're going to get sad looking onions that just want to bolt and don't give you the big onion bulbs that you're trying to get. Now I'm planting these onions about 1/4 inch deep and about 3 to 5 inches apart, giving each of the onions ample room to develop. Now there's a funny thing about onions, and that sometimes they like to develop above the soil. So if you see your onions hanging out above the soil, don't try to bury them deeper, just let them go, but you'll actually get bigger onions that way. I'm just barely covering up their little root bulbs, no more than 1/4 inch deep. Just a little bit of soil on top will do. Now as I'm planting this row of onions, I want to take a moment just to talk about companion planting. As you can see, I didn't dedicate a whole bed to these onions all on their own. I planted them with my peas, and I like to do this with a lot of my plants. When you plant different types of plants together, you're practicing permaculture practices and really emulating the way that nature does it. Nature does not like monocultures, and you'll find that your garden's more successful when you plant different varieties together as they keep pests away. And not only that, but it lets you be more efficient with your garden space and get more per square foot of garden space when you're planting things together. Companion planting is exactly what it sounds like, and it's the fact that certain plants grow better together. And by facilitating this, that means that there's going to be less work for you, the gardener. There's a little bit of a learning curve when deciding what to plant together, and I hope to cover that in a future video. And there we have it. We've planted this beautiful row of onion seedlings together. All it takes is a couple of days and a nice rainfall to get all of your onions pointing their greens toward the sun. This is the same onion plants about a week later.